Hi everybody, it's Judy here. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, and in today's video I'm going to talk about how I fertilize my plants. I've had a couple people asking me these questions, asking if I could make a video about it, and so here it is. I'm going to go over several different methods and types of fertilization that there is out there. So I am going to cover what I use and how I use it, but it would be remiss of me to not also cover other different methods of fertilization that there are available out there. So when you get a plant from a nursery, for example, just because this one is close and handy to me, this is a watermelon peperomia. When you get it from a nursery, chances are it is highly likely that it's already come to you fertilized. So when the growers make their soil mix or whatever it is, often you'll see those little balls, those little colorful balls, whether they're green or blue or yellow, mixed in through with your soil. Those are fertilization balls, and over time the plant will use up that plant food. By the time the plant gets to you, depending on how big it is, that fertilization would have already been in the soil maybe around 6 or 9 months. It also depends on the size of the plant. So when you do get your plant, if you do want to fertilize it, I would recommend that you go in with a really weak solution of fish emulsion or seaweed emulsion, just making sure that you dilute it way down and use the mixing instructions on the back of the bottle or whatever packaging that your fertilizer comes in. Also, when you're repotting your plants, you may want to fertilize, and another method that you could do with that is when you make your soil mixture, if you're one who mixes your own soil mixture, then you could also mix through that like an organic, like worm poop, worm castings. That is a really great fertilizer to mix in through with your soil. This type of organic fertilizer doesn't burn the leaves, which is a huge plus, and it's a slow release in the soil. The plant will absorb it as it needs it, and that's another really good way to introduce feeding fertilization in with your soil. So when I get a new plant from the nursery, I don't generally rush to fertilize this plant because I don't know where it's been, what it's been given, what kind of soil mix it has, and so I don't rush to feed it, because chances are, like I said before, the growers have already put some type of feeding fertilization into that soil mixture that the plant is in. If I immediately fertilize this plant after receiving it, there are some chances that I can over-fertilize it, which isn't necessarily a good thing. Fertilizer, I'm going to say this word a lot in this video. More fertilizer doesn't usually mean it's better for the plant. So when I get a plant from the nursery, I hold off feeding it for maybe about 2 or 3 months. I let it acclimate to the space, and if it's throwing out new leaves, then I will go ahead and feed it. So when I started out my plant collection and my plant journey, and I was learning how to feed my plants when they needed it, just kind of gauging the situation that they're in, I started out with sea salt. Now, sea salt isn't exactly necessarily a plant food, it's more of a soil conditioner. So then I switched over to Power Feed, which is actually a fertilizer. Now this video isn't sponsored by them, although I would love it if they would. So I used Power Feed for the longest time. This is dynamic fertilizer and soil conditioner, so it's not just soil conditioner, which is what sea salt is. It's actually a complete fertilizer. So it has nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, all things which are so incredibly important when it comes to plant growth. These nutrients encourage stronger growth, greener leaves, and sometimes, in some cases, it'll encourage flowering of the plant as well. But that also will depend on whatever situation or spot your plant is in. So Power Feed, I highly recommend. This is easily available in like Bunnings or any nursery or hardware store that might be close in your area. It's a high potency, organically based fertilizer, specially formulated to provide a dynamic balance of nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, trace elements, and amino acids to boost health and growth in all plants, including natives. So this one, highly recommend. I mean, it's worked great for my plants. If you've seen any of my videos, they're lush, they're happy, they've stayed happy this whole time, and I put it all down to this. That's not the only thing I've used. I have recently switched over to something else, which I don't know if it's necessarily better, and I have been using it maybe for the last 2 months or so, and I've been using it every single time I water, but with a very, very weak solution. The reason why I go in with a super weak solution, sometimes even less than the recommended dosage, is because I do it with every single time I water. Now, if I didn't do it every single time I water, maybe like once every 4 waterings, then I would use the recommended dosage. But I like to personally go along the route of less more often rather than more every so often, if that makes any sense. And I did that with Power Feed. I also do that with this new one that I've been trying. This is called the Yates Thrive Indoor Liquid Plant Food for lush, healthier indoor plants. This is also a concentrate. You need to dilute this when you use it. And it has basically the same things as Power Feed, but I don't know if it was just in my head, but when I started using this, all my plants that I watered with this, I haven't done it with all of them, but all the plants that I watered with this started giving me off new leaves. And I don't know if it was just in my head, but I'm going to start like keeping better track of what plants I have watered with this and see what they do. But I'm pretty sure it's this. So, I mean, it's not necessarily better or worse than this one. Like, I recommend both of them. This is just something that I wanted to try out and see how it went with my plants. And so this is what I have been using recently. And I've been getting so many brand new leaves on so many of my plants in the midst of winter. And that's definitely saying something. So that's basically the gist of what I fertilize my plants with. Now, when I fertilize my plants, like I said, with every single watering, and the reason why I do it with every single watering is because I want the water to first loosen up the soil, drain everything through, and then I go in with a fertilizer so that it kind of dilutes it evenly throughout the whole pot, throughout all the soil within the pot, and it'll just completely encompass all the roots, reach all the roots. And that's why I do it with watering rather than just going through with a watering can and just going through and watering each plant within the pot. I hope that makes sense. I also just have a few tips about feeding your plants. I know that we rush to feed plants if they're not growing, but if they're not growing because it is winter, then I would not feed them. Winter time is a time when plants slow down. They need that time to sleep or rejuvenate or rest before it hits spring and summer, which is the growing season, which is when they'll actually go crazy and start to burst out with new growth. So if your plants have stopped growing because it is winter, chances are they've gone dormant, they're resting, they're sleeping. Don't disturb them with any extra food. They're going to be okay through this period. It's just a natural life cycle for most plants. And that's the general rule I stick by. It's the general advice that I give to most people, because I don't want to be responsible for killing your plants if you feed them during the winter. For me personally, however, if my plants are still growing, if they're still throwing out new growth even in winter, like most of my plants are, because I'm able to create an environment within which they can still thrive and grow, then I feed my plants, but with a very diluted solution of either of these fertilizers. It is possible for your plants to still grow through the winter time, very much like mine are, but it's important to not over-fertilize them, which is why I go in with a very weak solution, because over-fertilizing your plants, if they're still growing, but they're not growing super quickly like they would in spring or summer. So I tone down the fertilizer. It's so important to not over-fertilize your plants, because it will do your plants more harm than good. For example, if you've gone through with Power Feed or whatever liquid fertilizer that you've used, and your plants start to show signs of stress on the leaves, darker splotches, they look kind of burned, then chances are you either haven't diluted your solution down enough, or your plant didn't need it, or you went straight in with your fertilizer mix into dry soil rather than wetting it all first and then going in with your fertilizer. It's so important to wet your soil first with your water as you're watering it, then go in with your fertilizing solution. I've found that to be crucial when fertilizing, so that I don't actually burn the leaves, because if you're burning the leaves, then you are most definitely burning the roots. Most times the stresses that might show up on your leaves is an indication of what's going on in the roots. So it's just your plant's way of talking to you and telling you if there's something not quite right going on underneath the surface of the soil. Now, if you're just starting out feeding your plants, you don't quite know what you're doing, you're not so sure about how to do it, I would recommend that you start with very, very small quantities to start with. Start out with a very diluted solution and then work your way from there, because as you keep on doing it, you're going to learn, your plants are going to talk to you, and they're going to let you know if they like it or they don't like it. So again, it's a growing journey, it's a learning journey, both for ourselves and our plants, and that's basically it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope it was helpful and informational. I hope I was able to explain to you about fertilization of your plants, what I use and how I use it. So if you guys have any more plant questions, I love plant questions like this. I love creating videos like this for you guys, and if you find it helpful, please be sure to give the video a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.